Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to continue to extend what we have learned in previous lessons by showing you how to do statistics lines across phases. And then we're going to use Lane and Gast's article to begin to describe variation within phases and between conditions. So this is based on the Lane and Gast article, and I suggest you read that prior to doing the homework for this week. So again, I'm going to use the data that we've used before for client X. And so I have my script up, and I'm going to use the getCSV function to grab client X's baseline and intervention data. And then I'm going to attach it by just running line 2. And I think what we're going to do is begin by recreating the line graph and extend that to what we have done last week. So I'm going to actually, we're going to have to edit this because we have disrupt and p-disrupt, as you see here. This isn't Jenny's yelling. So we're going to have to change this to disrupt. And notice again that I'm not rewriting lines, I'm just changing the names of variables. And I'm going to change this to class and count and client X disruption. And I'm going to run this, and we can again see the discontinuity between the phases. And so we're going to run this to put a line between the phases. And we're going to accept it. And we are going to label each phase. So we're going to start with A. Could have just started with B. And I'm going to accept this. And I'm going to run this again. And the next part we did not do last week. We almost stopped there. But what I want to do now is make this a little bit more complicated and help us begin our interpretation to decide whether the disruptions improved or stayed the same or got worse over time. So we're going to start with this AB stat that we had done previously and put a mean line in phase A. And we did this in a previous lesson. Oops, I forgot to accept that previous line. Now I can run it again. And we do see that the mean is at 4. We're going to accept that line. And let's put that right there. And we'll accept that. And now we're going to redo the same thing, but we're going to put a mean line in the second phase as well, which is new this time. So I'm going to change this to B. We still want a mean line. Now, if you do a mean line in phase A, you have to do the same line in phase B. If you're going to do a median line in phase A, you have to do a median line in phase B because you need to compare like numbers. And so it says click the mouse in the beginning of the phase that you want. So we don't want it touching our line separating the phases, but just next to it anywhere really is fine, and it puts it at the appropriate height. And now we can change this. We see the mean is 4.167, and we get that from over here. Let's round it to just 2 decimal points to 1.7. And we'll put it here. And before we begin our analysis, let's accept this, based on Lane and Gast's article. And we're not going to do the whole thing today because we're going to learn additional tools as we go. And I'm going to have a little bit of criticism for their work. But let's get the descriptive statistics for each phase. And previously, you just saw descriptive statistics for one phase, so now you're going to see it for another. And so I'm going to continue. I'm going to make a note here, get descriptives for each phase. And what that means when I say descriptive statistics, I mean just the mean, the number of observations in each phase, because it's just describing each phase. So I'm going to put my cursor on this line and run it. And now we have more information. Now this is the box plot comparing the phases. And the dark line in the middle is the median value. So in the baseline, that's 4. And we see in the median for the intervention phase, it actually goes up by half a point. But we see, looking at this, that the range of values from the lowest to the highest is greater for the intervention. So in the intervention, which is, by the way, the 2, 2 is the second, well, A is the A phase, 2 is the highest value, 1 is the lowest value in each phase. So in the baseline, our values range, a number of disruptions range from 2 to 6, and we see that from the lower whisker and the higher whisker. But in the intervention phase, it ranges from 1 to 7. But let's go back. We can scroll back to our line graph, and we can sort of take a look at what this means as well. So we see in the baseline, we had 5 data points. See, this is N, which is the sample size. So we had 5 observations in the A phase, and we could count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have many more in the intervention phase. We have 12, which we have here. And the mean we had seen when we created the line graph, and the median we saw previously. The standard deviation is, on average, how much each value varies from the mean. And we see a little bit more variation in the intervention, as was illustrated in the box plot on the previous slide. So now I wanted to just go through this analysis with you. And we're not going to do all of these things, but I want you to get a sense as to what this is. So in Lane and Guest, they talk about within phase descriptives. So we're going to just do this verbally for this, because your homework is going to be doing this with Brenda's data, but written out. So the first thing they want you to do is label the phases. So first, we're going to describe the A phase or baseline phase. So this would be an A. And for number 2, they ask you really for some descriptives that you get in this AB descript. So the number of observations in the baseline is 5, and the mean, median, and range. So the mean is 4, the median is also 4, and the range goes from a low of 2 to a high of 6. And they talk about absolute level change, which is the difference. The level change first is the difference between the first and the last value. So you're going to actually have to get that from looking at the graph. So the first value in the A phase is 4, the last is 2. So there's actually a reduction of 2 disruptions in the level change. And in the intervention phase, our first, well, we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, that's the absolute level change. So that's what I want you to report for that. And we see things a little differently in the intervention, which is denoted as the B phase. We have 12 observations. The mean is 4.167. The median is a little bit higher at 4.5. I like this depiction, by the way, because you actually see that the average number goes up, but by a very small amount. And the absolute level change, we start at a 3 and end up at a 5. So whereas we had a deceleration of disruptive behavior in the baseline, in the intervention, it looks like there's a little bit of change, but in the wrong direction, because of course we want our client disruptions to decrease. So that's what they mean when they're talking about the between conditions, whether it's accelerating or decelerating. It looks to be that we're decelerating in the baseline, and we're sort of all over the place in the intervention, but with that absolute change, we are seeing things sort of go in the wrong direction, but just by just a little bit. And that is how we can use Lane and Gast and these line graphs to begin to describe visual analysis in client change. So the question really would be is, if you were the social worker for client X, what would you do? And my take is that you've got 12 sessions or 12 class periods during the intervention, and things by and large are not getting any better. So not at all. And if anything, they seem to be getting slightly worse. So in my estimation, we would want to change that intervention. I'm going to have you do this analysis with Brenda's data for your homework. So I hope you found this to be valuable, and have a great day.